couple things I don't really like here. But what we've got here is this brake hose is tied to this fuel supply line, which is a rubber hose arrangement all the way from the tank. You can really see here the header proximity to rubber hoses, one having fuel and one having brake fluid, neither of which you want near your exhaust. And so I'm going to reroute both of those up through here where there's plenty of room from the header. And in fact, I have sourced, sitting over here on the roof of the Moke, the full-length metal fuel line for this Morris. A lot of folks think, well, that little quarter-inch line, this is a performance thing, and I put a bigger engine in, but I'm telling you what, a quarter-inch supply of fuel, not in its wildest dreams, really, would a Street 1275 be able to consume more fuel than that, and there's a number of advantages to the metal line. This is 5/16, and, you know, it feels pretty good here, but you make it about 12, 14 feet of it, as it snakes around down there and makes a clumsy turn around the clutch linkage, as well as this here. That's a lot of volume and a lot of flex. And these carbs really dislike uneven fuel pressure. And you get a pump mounted by the tank and 10 or more feet of rubbery, in some places hot, bent, flexy hose. You got some fluctuation in your fuel pressure that you're not going to be able to avoid. I'm going to try to reinstall the metal line, which comes up right here, right up here to the carburetor. I would just take this hose right here, right to the metal hose, which clips to the floor nicely, away from the exhaust, directly to the fuel tank. No flex, no fuss, no muss. That's what we're doing. There, we're looking a lot cleaner already. I have removed all of this and made a, using a existing brake line, made a metal section where it goes through the engine compartment, and I'm rerouting it entirely to keep it completely away from the header. It wasn't a great choice having it that close, as I suspected. Here's what the brake hose. It hadn't failed. It has an internal tube surrounded by this looks like fiberglass mesh, and only the outer housing melted, but still, you don't want that with your brake line right over the collector portion of the header. And so, revising it this way, I'm rerouting it, making it much shorter and having a much more direct downward route to the master cylinder instead of kind of sneaking around the clutch linkage. And so a big improvement in reliability and function of this remote master. Just like that, instead of hanging down over the collector, now I've fashioned this steel piece that avoids the exhaust, avoids touching anything really, and sneaks down here to the inside of the frame, not pulling the fuel hoses and this brake unit through the frame openings and such. So a more direct route. It's just details. Details I like to attend to. Such makes these things just well sorted. You don't deal with goofiness and points of failure. You stop them before they happen. One final detail to do with the rerouting of the brake and fuel lines. I elected to mount a fuel filter up here. There was already a screen filter as part of the little electric fuel pump back there at the tank level. And so having two filters back there was a bit overkill, may have been affecting our fuel supply a little bit. And one of the nicest things about having a filter right here is with one quick look, you can diagnose a fuel problem. Are you out of gas? Is the fuel pump dead? Is something happening? You can see immediately. I had noticed some erratic behavior from the brake lights, and this has some pretty nifty LEDs back there. But there was this effect of the light being on fire, sort of a flickering ember look. And I decided it was the brake lights because everything else functioned normally. So, even though it was an opportunity to install my favored mechanical switch on the pedal, like new cars use and get out of the hydraulics. This one has a kind of a unique enclosed brake pedal assembly, and while it's possible, I'm sure, I decided that the old one had worked for better than 60 years, and I had a new one, so I installed it. As I find any other details here, this is what I'm going to keep tending to. I would rather have the next owner go, hey, I like the way that was done. Well, here's what I picked up today. You can see the other one kind of laying back there out of harm's way where the wires won't get anywhere. But it's the exact one with the correct screw-on terminals, and the button works. There we are, progress. Next will be the fuel gauge. So, sending unit looks good, and it actually turned out that the float had a hole in it. So this was full of gasoline, split along the seam, but it seems to use the exact same one as the minis, and I had a few of those around. So I got a float off one that had other problems, and verified with a meter that this does works through a range as you operate it. I went and got a new one from my friends over at Mini Mania, but it's the standard Morris one, and I have to think that the van gas tank might be a bit different. And so it actually makes more sense in this case to put it back in. Here we are, underneath the back side of the Morris Minor for a change, looking forward. What I did here, and let's take a quick look and see if the phone can reach up and see. I reached up in here and reinstalled the fuel sending unit, verified its proper function, and it's wired. And so now, any issues that remain, I didn't get it to work yet. The gauge flicks when you turn the ignition on, but I know everything back here is working. So we'll take a look at some other things. Got a chance to look at the underside here after I removed all the rubber fuel hose, installed a metal line. You can barely see it up there, tucked up against the floorboard going forward in a way that keeps it away from the exhaust. I cleaned up the fuel pump. Wiring back here is a little too long, kind of wrapped around places. The original Morris Minor fuel pump is in the engine compartment, and they're not terribly reliable. A sucker pump pulling fuel all that distance back to the tank up here is less than ideal. So I'm a big fan of these little Mr. Gasket style pumps. I showed years ago installing one on that Moke over there. Still works perfect. You get in, bzz, it's going. And this is perfectly positioned at the level of the fuel tank, pushing fuel forward. And now I've revised it to its 1/4-inch metal fuel line, far cleaner installation than having rubber hose hanging down around the clutch linkage and such. So more and more details tended to. This is such a well-sorted Morris Minor. Someone's really going to enjoy this one. We can see that I've installed the other set of wheels. These are look to be about 13 by 6 or so, with 175/70 tires, so considerably shorter than the 14-inch highway set I had on here originally. With the low gears and the powerful engine, I was keen to try the smaller set of tires, and it really scoots along. This thing is just fun to drive. I encourage you to look at the driving videos, and if there's anything specific you'd like to see or know about, contact me. I'll make a video if it's appropriate, or I will certainly answer any questions. Look forward to passing this on to somebody who will cherish it the way that Phil did.